Good evening, welcome to Wightlink Raiders TV. We're joined by Alex Murray, head coach for Solent Gosport Devils. Obviously, Alex, a bit of a turbulent season so far for Solent Gosport Devils. A bit of an inconsistent season, but you're still in there, obviously, at the sort of tail end of the table above Milton Keynes. However, you obviously have had a much better season than last year. Looking to consolidate everything now, obviously, with yourself and Steve Galloway, of course, coming in as bench coach. How's the season panning out for you now?
Yeah, you know, we're looking forward, and it's quite public knowledge of the turmoil that we've had this year. But we're looking to move forward. When we'll sort of, step down from coach, and I was sort of asked if I could take the reins. The first thing I did was get Steve in. Me and Steve are really good friends throughout all the years that I've played on the island, and obviously, we talk quite a lot, and it was my first priority to get him on board, and the guys have really taken to that. This season, we have our own objectives now. We're almost there in terms of survival. That was really our objective at the start of the year, even so, and now it's even more so that we just try and pick up some points at this tail end of the season.
Last weekend at home against Chelmsford Chieftains restricted them to a 0-0 first period, and then they end up leaving with just a 2-0 win. Obviously, that influence on the bench with Steve, like you say, Zach mentioned, presence on the bench. He's obviously adding a little bit of calmness to the players, and obviously he's bringing over his experience to them, which is making everything kind of go a little bit more less chaotic, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, beforehand we were okay. We were drilled, and we're just bringing in Steve. It helps that defensive core so much, and everyone's wanting to learn. That's the great thing about it. The guys in the room, they're frustrated, they're doing things wrong, but the first thing they're doing is asking. After the game tonight, we've got guys coming up to Steve and myself and asking, what went wrong there, what do we do? And we're looking to improve, and we were lucky that we've got, the end of this season our main objective obviously is still to survive. Well, I think we need, a couple more points to ensure that, but the rest of it's just learning, and learning off guys like Steve that have been around. And we've got some senior players in there as well, Kent Johnson and Chung Goddard. They've played a lot of time, and it's leaning on them guys, and we're bringing in some younger players to experience this league, and hopefully we can look forward.
You've obviously got a good relationship with the junior club there. Yourself obviously coached a lot of those age groups yourself, so you know a lot of talent's coming through. So there's a lot of young blood that can come through, like Luke told tonight, obviously had a few shifts in the game. There's a lot of, like I say, a lot of promise for the future, and like you say, you're above Milton Keynes quite safely at the moment. Your aim is to stay in this division and build from that, and obviously next year to try and build and move on and take a step up.
We're not taking that for granted. I think we're about 9 points clear, but still, that they've made some signings. Romford have lost some guys, and I think they've picked a few up. In that little rink, anything can happen. It's ridiculous, that rink. So we're not taking that we're safe right now. We're not. I don't see that. We need, a few more points. We've got MK away. We've got Bracknell at home, which are the key games that we've highlighted. In sort of respect to the guys that have played at the club, we're a small tight unit there down in Gosport, and looking at the guys that play on that team, they all have experienced. Most of the guys have played and come straight up through the club. So the passion's there from the guys, because they all want Gosport to do well. The young guys that we brought through, like Satully, that's great. Even my little brother Mitchell, they've come through as well. That's great. And we're looking to do that with the 18s. We've already started bringing 18s out with us and training. They're on the bench. We've got a little bit of a relationship with the Guildford 18s as well, so we're looking to bring a few of them out. We've already had them for games. So that's great positives, looking for guys to come.
Turning our attention to off-ice, obviously commercially as a club, it's no secret that obviously this league now is a lot more competitive than years gone by. The likes of Chelmsford Chieftains, Wightlink Raiders, Romford, etc. and Victor pushing the bar up with the terms of competitiveness, and obviously they're in a position to pay players. Obviously it's got to be a little bit of a struggle for Gosport in that respect, trying to match that off-ice, as it were, commercially. But you do get a good following, obviously locally, and you can obviously try and provide some sort of incentive for players there. You're not maybe in the same position to some clubs that you've got a lot of money that you can try and offer and lure players away. So it's imperative that relationship with the juniors is obviously solid and bringing them in.
Yeah, completely. The guys that play at Gosport want to play there, because we can't offer them much. Guys pay to play. As simple as that. Every player on that team wants to be there, wants to play, and wants to play. And most of the time, what we're looking to acquire is guys maybe in the Div 2 that want to showcase themselves in the Div 1. And there's some great teams to play against. We signed Chris Bill from the Buffalo, who had his debut tonight. Excellent game personally, and it was just the opportunity to get to play in this league. Like you said, people are pushing the bar forward, but that makes us want to stay with it and keep in touch. Outside of the rink, our manager Paul and some other guys are working really, really hard behind closed doors to get sponsorship in. We've had some really good big sponsorships this year, just to help, with equipment, or help with guys with sticks and tape. It's things that are taken for granted in most clubs, especially me coming from the island for the last 5 years. Things that you took for granted, laces, skates being sharpened, having stick tape and sock tape for games was something that didn't happen at Gosport, and the financial backing that we've got from some sponsors, although it may seem nothing to some guys, it's incredible for us, and we're grateful for all that sponsorship that we've had.
You touched on your like say your time on the island, 5 years on the island. Obviously when you come back here and play, is that kind of a little bit of sentimental touch when you go out there and skate in the warm up, knowing that you had 5 successful seasons here? Is it hard to kind of get into the focus knowing that you had some good memories here, or did you just think, no, I'm certainly Gosport level now?
Yeah, look, my 5 years here were great. I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. And for whatever reason, the summer things didn't work out for me to come back. I'm really hopeful that the island obviously still is very successful. But when I'm out there playing against them, I want nothing other than win for myself, and for my team. And when I'm out there, it's kind of a different experience, as it was when I used to go back to Gosport. But Gosport's my home. It's always been my home. I always intended to go back there. I wish the island every sort of success that they have, and they've got a really good team here this year. But us as a team, we're now going to move forward as Gosport, and myself now and Steve being on board there, trying to set something up there and learning from what I've learned from the island. I've learned a lot of things at the island, and now it's just trying to transform that over to Gosport and have a very similar successful club eventually. Yeah,
like I say, on final note there, you've got some involvement now with coaching. Obviously, that's what most players want to do at the end of the day. Even just playing they still want to get into coaching, and you've done that many years with juniors now at the senior level, so it's obviously a good thing for you.
I started coaching really young, and then when I moved over to the island, I obviously stopped. I always, I'm sure if you spoke to Corny, he'd always say that I'd always try and put my 2 pence in, whether he wanted it or not. I'd always be, vocal. And when the opportunity came at Gosport, I wasn't going to say no, because I absolutely love coaching. I'm always vocal. I'm always wanting to do things. I'm always want to help the guys out. And actually, it's a bit more of a learning curve for me as well, because being that one where guys are expecting you to lead, it's always good when I chipped in a bit, but actually now when guys are turning to you asking what's next, and working on your own game and playing your own game, that's things that I'm going to learn and pick up. And like I say, the last 10 games of this season are only going to help that. It's all about building for next year, but also actually let's make sure that we're safe and survive first before we look too far ahead for next year.
Well, it's good to see you obviously come down here. Obviously, it's nice to speak to you. Good luck on the rest of the season. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers, mate.